Zimbabwe fought to be liberated from an unfair, unjust, and selective enriching system. How far has Zimbabwe come in terms of graft and corruption-related cases since 1980? We will try to chronicle events from post-independence to date. 1983, the Phaweni scandal. 2 years into the country's independence, the drought of 1982 created an opportunity for businessman Samson Bernard Phaweni to bribe his way into winning a tender to transport drought relief food across the country. An estimated $6 million was lost to Phaweni because of the underhand deals, which involved top government officials who were not even prosecuted. 1985, the GMB scandal. 1986, the National Railways housing scandal. 1987, the Zisco Steel blast furnace scandal involved gross abuse of resources by government officials and company executives. Among those implicated were Gabriel Masanga, the former Zisco Group MD, David Murangari, Samuel Mumbengegwi, former Industrial and International Trade Minister, Joyce Mujuru, former Vice President, and Olivia Muchena, former Minister of Science and Technology. These and other individuals were implicated for abuse of resources through claiming large allowances from the company after traveling on business that had nothing to do with Zisco. Other dubious contracts included bids that were rigged in favor of interested parties and the taking cash for private use. The Air Zimbabwe Fokker plane scandal in 1987 involved over $100 million. The Willowgate scandal of 1988 rocked the country following the exposure by the Chronicle of government officials who were given preference in buying vehicles at the Willowvale Motor Industries and reselling them at very inflated prices. At the time, Willowvale was the only legal importer of cars in Zimbabwe, which resulted in a long waiting list for these vehicles. Ministers and members of parliament were allowed to jump to the front of the line on grounds that they need cars for official business. Instead of keeping these cars, however, it was uncovered that many officials were reselling them at inflated prices for personal gain. In 1989, we had the Santana Gate scandal. 1994, the War Veterans Compensation Scandal saw the blatant misuse of the War Victims Compensation Fund, which was intended to compensate those injured during the Liberation War. The fund was hijacked by political elites who exaggerated their injuries so as to inflate claims from the fund, and none were prosecuted. Some able-bodied and healthy officials even received up to 100% compensation. 1995, the GMB scandal. 1996, the VIP housing scandal. 1998, the Harare City Council refuse tender scandal, as well as the Boca banking scandal, which involved $968 million fraud, perpetrated on the Zimbabwean people with the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, RBZ, and the office of the president accused of attempting to cover it up. 1999 was a particularly bad year, as several scandals were reported, namely the VIP housing loan scandal, the GMB scandal, the Ministry of Water and Rural Development Chinese tender scandal, VIP land grab scandal, the Noxim scandal, in which members corruptly siphoned millions of dollars out of the oil firm, which was already reeling under a deficit of about $5 billion. The fraud scandal implicated Inos Chikore, the former permanent secretary of the Ministry of Transport. Ministers Mike Nyambuya and Opa Muchinguri, as well as politician and businessman Philip Chianga. The DRC timber and diamond scandal, in which the UN reported the DRC's rich natural resources such as timber, diamonds, copper, and gold were clearly used to fuel the conflict. A UN panel released a report accusing Rwanda, Uganda, and Zimbabwe of systematically exploiting Congolese resources and recommended that the Security Council impose sanctions. The wealth of natural resources went directly into the pockets of political elites at the expense of the nation's economy. 2001. The Harare Airport Scandal. In 2013, there was the Excelgate scandal. In 2014, the Salary-Gate scandal revealed stories of mega salaries of the bosses of key parastatals that were failing to pay low-level employees, in many cases for several months. For instance, Zimbabwe Broadcasting Corporation Chief Executive Officer Happison Muchechetere grossed about $40,000 and received about $250,000 as a housing allowance, while many employees at the public broadcaster had not been paid for months. Cuthbert Dube, CEO of the Public Service Medical Aid Society, was forced to retire because of a scandal where he was reported to have earned $500,000 every month. The well-documented ZESA scandal of 2018 shined a spotlight on allegations that sometime in March 2012, ZETDC and ZESA Enterprises entered into a 2-year business transaction with PME Power Solutions for the design and equipment supply of 3 substations without going to tender. In a separate and widely publicized case related to ZESA Enterprises, Wicknell Chivayo and his company Intratrek allegedly paid a $10,000 bribe to Zimbabwe Power Company Board Chairperson Stanley Kajanje. The charges arose in relation to the multi-million Gwanda solar project, which was awarded to Chivayo by ZPC, a unit of power utility ZESA. The 2019 National Social Security Authority scandal was spurred by a forensic audit report released in Parliament exposing shocking corruption, fraud, criminal abuse of office, and theft that saw the authority being prejudiced of more than $175 million. The scandal was linked to Minister Priska Mfumira, where housing contracts were awarded to undeserving companies. In 2019, as part of the Command Agriculture scandal, the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission investigated possible abuse of funds under the controversial 2016 Command Agriculture Scheme, amid claims that there are no records of how close to $3 billion was disbursed. The Ministry of Agriculture could not account for the funds. President Mnangagwa stated that the program was a special project, hence the non-involvement of the Ministry of Agriculture. As recent as 2020, the Corona Gate scandal warned of the mystery behind the procurement of rapid test kits for COVID-19 by the government from dubious foreign registered firms, which are alleged to have used their proximity to the first family to push through the deal and payments. The questions we should ask ourselves are: how much has Zimbabwe lost to date? Who benefited from these scandals? Where are these perpetrators today? All these cases should be revisited and the law applied in retrospect. The law allows for seizure of properties of fraud and corruption cases under the Money Laundering and Proceeds of Crime Act. Courts need to be capacitated to do their work expeditiously and transparently. Finally, there is a need for transparency in the handling of corruption cases where prosecution can be done without fear. Our hope is that this video will inspire discussions leading to the endorsement of the action plan on fighting corruption. Implementing of this action plan will demonstrate our firm determination to work towards the ambitious goal of strengthening a reliable, transparent, and competitive economic system, thereby recharging the growth engine of Zimbabwe. This bold initiative will surely lead us to our long-awaiting goal, building a corrupt-free society.